And hello. Today we'll be looking at units of length. So this will be an introductory lesson into area and volume. I'll be discussing exactly what do I mean by units of length, and we'll be discussing what units we use and how do we convert different types of units. So, units of length. What do I mean by units of length? Well, length, how long something is, and then units, well, that's just a way of measuring how long something is. So I'll give you a few examples just to explain what I mean. So this length here, from your elbow to kind of the base of the palm of your hand, that's actually what we call a foot. It's roughly, for most people, it's around a foot. So you might have heard when you're measuring height in people, if you ask how tall you are, usually you'd say, oh, I'm 5 foot this or 6 foot something. That's basically saying how many of these lengths stacked up tall am I? How, if you stack them up vertically, how tall am I? Well, it would be how many of these lengths. Now it's a bit confusing. It's called a foot, yet usually we'd say it's around from your elbow to the palm of your hand. Here's some other examples. You have inch. So along the top here, these 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inch, 4 inch. This is on a measuring tape you use for construction. Then along the bottom we have centimeters. So see the way it says cm, centimeters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, going along. You might have heard yards. Usually it's used in sport quite a bit. A yard is about 3 feet. Well, it is 3 feet. Usually it's also used with, let's say, roads and things, how far away you are from another building. It'd be a few yards. Then, the most commonly used one that you will be using a lot, meters. So a meter is roughly the length of a guitar, your standard baseball bat, or even a golf club. Those are usually around 1 meters. So, what units we'll be using? Well, I kind of mentioned it already. We use a thing called the metric system. So there's also a thing called the imperial system. So that would be based on inches, feet, and other units. But we use a thing called the metric system over in Europe generally. So what we'll be using is meters. We base everything off length in meters. So we think of your starting point as meters, how we start off with a meter. Then we have other kind of slight mutations of a meter, I'll call them. You have a kilometer or a kilometer, you can pronounce it both ways, kilometer or kilometer. And we have km. So these are the abbreviations. So we're lazy. We don't write out the full thing. We just write km for kilometer. M for meter. cm, I mentioned it a minute ago, centimeters. And then mm is millimeters. So what are all these things actually? Well, we start off with a meter. So remember, a meter is about your guitar length or your baseball bat length or whatever you're measuring it off of. Now, I want to do a bit of Greek because it'll explain where the other units come from. So mille in Greek is 1,000th. So 1 over 1,000. So that's 1,000. So a millimeter would be 1,000th of a meter. So what does that mean? If I had a meter stick or just a length of twine or something that's a meter long, if I divide it into 1,000 bits, each of those bits would be a millimeter long. So it's 1 little thousandth of a meter. So there's 1,000 of those guys in a full 1 meter. Centi is 1 over 100th. So centimeter would be 100th of a meter. So these are fractions now, so 1 over 100. So what does that mean? If I started off with a meter, I divide it into 100 bits. So this time I'm dividing into 100 bits. And each of those 100 bits would be a centimeter. So remember, when I'm dividing it, what do I mean? I'm dividing into equal sections, so equal parts. That would be a centimeter. Then, kind of a very larger case of it, a kilo is 1,000 in Greek. So a kilometer or kilometer is 1,000 meters. So this is opposite. This is actually bigger than a meter. It's 1,000 of these meters stacked up together. So kilo is quite big. You might have heard it in, let's say you're going for a run. You usually talk about kilometers. not centimeters or millimeters. There'd be lots and lots of millimeters. There's be millions of millimeters probably, and centimeters there'd be quite a few. Kilometers, there's 1,000 of them, 1,000 meters. So let's say we had 1 meter. Well, what would that be in millimeters? It's 1,000 millimeters. So again, mm is millimeters. 1 meter in centimeters. Well, there's 100 centimeters in a meter. So these are the same. If I said, oh, this thing is 1,000 millimeters long, that's the exact same thing as saying a meter long. If I said something was 100 centimeters long, that's the exact same thing as saying 1 meter long. Obviously, 1 meter is just 1 meter. 1 kilometer or kilometer would be 1,000 meters. So if I said, oh, I ran 1,000 meters, that's the exact same thing as saying I ran a kilometer. Then we want to talk about how do we convert from one to another. So this is kind of your go-to slide. The way I like to think about it is this. Start off with your meters. So again, I always like to think about meters. If I wanted to find how many centimeters are in a meter, well, remember, centi is 100. So there's 100 centimeters in a meter. So this little blue arrow indicates if I was in meters. So let's say I had 5 meters and I wanted to somehow find it in centimeters. Well, then how many centimeters would there be in 5 meters? Well, it would be 5 multiplied by 100. Now, why am I multiplying by 100? Think about it. Each meter would have 100 centimeters. So 5 meters would be 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100 plus 100 5 times. So 500 centimeters. Or I could have just said 5 by 100. Let's say I'm in centimeters and I want to convert to millimeters. Now, why am I saying times 10 and not times 100? Well, centimeters, think about it. There's 100 centimeters in 1 meter. There's 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. So, question is, how many millimeters in a centimeter? Well, think about it. Well, there would be 10. Why? If I had 10 millimeters, so 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. Well, how many centimeters are there in a meter? There's 100. So what's 100 by 10? Well, it's 1,000. So that's where I get my 1,000 meters, or 1,000 millimeters are in a meter. So each centimeter has 10 millimeters. Now, a nice visual way to remember that, if you get your rulers out, you'd say 0 centimeters, 1 centimeters. These little lines indicate a millimeter. So you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. Then going this way, if I said I have 5 kilometers, how many meters is that? Well, think about it. How many meters are in a kilometer? Well, there's 1,000 meters. Kilo, 1,000. So there's 1,000 meters in a kilometer. So 5 kilometers, well, there'd be 5,000 meters. Now, as long as you can go this way, you can always go back. So if I want to convert centimeters to millimeters, well, I multiply by 10. If I wanted to go from millimeters to centimeters, I just go back this way. So I'd be dividing by 10. And if I wanted to convert centimeters to meters, I'd divide by 100. So as long as you kind of know the blue, you'll know this. You'll know the opposite. So remember, just going back, meters. There's 100 centimeters in a meter. There is 10 millimeters in 1 centimeter. And there's 1,000 millimeters in a meter. Now, how would I jump from here to here? Think about it. Or sorry, from meters to millimeters. Well, I'd multiply by 100, multiply by 10. That's 1,000. Yeah? So I'm just kind of skipping this middle step by multiplying by 1,000. Then, if I want to say, okay, how many millimeters are in a kilometer? Well, it would be 1,000 by 100 by 10. Huge numbers. And I have some scales down here. So a pen would be around, a pencil or a pen would be around 15 centimeters. A desk would be about a meter. And then distance between two cities or places could be quite far. So it would be around 200 kilometers. This is the most important slide. I would take some time to kind of sit down and can you move from one thing to the other? So not just moving one step, if you could move from meters to millimeters or millimeters to kilometers or kilometers to centimeters, can you do all that comfortably? And try and remember, okay, well, there's 10 millimeters in a centimeter. That's a really important one. And then how many centimeters are in a meter? So then the question is, how many millimeters in 2.8 meters? So how would you do that? Well, 2.8 meters, well, I want to find how many centimeters are in a meter. So 2.8 times 100, will there be 280 centimeters? So think about it, there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter. So in 2.8 meters, there'd be 280 centimeters. Yeah? Now, how many millimeters are in 280 centimeters? So do you remember, I kind of went like this. I went to here. Now I want to find millimeters. So how many millimeters are in 280 centimeters? Well, I'm going to be multiplying by 10 again. So 280 centimeters, well, that's 280 times 10 millimeters. So it would be 2,800 millimeters. So what I did there was I moved along the scale. I went from meters to centimeters, then centimeters to millimeters. Eventually you'll be able to just jump from meters to millimeters, but if you're not comfortable with that, go along the steps. So start with your base unit and then move to the left or move to the right, whatever the case is, and then keep on moving until you get to the right unit. And again, there's 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. So if you wanted to kind of skip it, 2.8 meters would be 1,000 by 2.8, which is 2,800 millimeters. And you see we have the same answer. So you could go this way, or if you want to jump straight to the answer, if you remembered there was 1,000 millimeters in 1 meter. Okay, here's some recap questions, so you can do them. So convert 45 millimeters into meters. Well, thing is, how many meters are in 45 millimeters? Well, there's actually less than 1 meter. Think about it. 45 millimeters is tiny. So first I'm going to convert it to centimeters. So 45 millimeters, well, there's 10 centimeters in, there's 10 millimeters is 1 centimeter. So 45 divided by 10, well, that would be 4.5 centimeters. Yeah? So then I want to find meters. So 4.5 centimeters, if I divide it by 100, well, then I'd get meters because there's 100 centimeters in a meter. So it would be 0.045 meters. That's how much, if I converted 45 millimeters into meters. So it's really small. 45 millimeters is not even like 0.1 of a meter. If I had, let's say, 0.145 meters, well, that would equate to 100, it would be 14.5 centimeters. So the thousands mark, yeah, that's millimeters. The tenths digit, that's centimeters. And then this would be tens of centimeters. So this would be 4.5 centimeters. Yeah? Or that's the same as 45 millimeters. Okay, how many centimeters are in a kilometer? 1 centimeter is 1/100th of a meter. Yeah, that's what centimeter means. So that means 1 centimeter is 0.01 meters. So 0.01 meters, how many, like what is that in kilometers? Well, I have to divide by 1,000. I'm moving to the right, if you think about it on that kind of graph. So 0.01 divided by 1,000, well, that would be 0.00001 kilometer. So 1 centimeter is a tiny, tiny thing compared to kilometers. Like, kilometer is huge. 1 centimeter is really, really small compared to it. So again, I go back to this and try and be comfortable moving from left to right on these units.